Laura Dern with Kyle MacLachlan in a scene from a film called Blue Velvet, written and directed by David Lynch. Welcome.
Thank you, Brian.
I want to point something out. Sitting here with you within the context of the Toronto International Film Festival, your film Blue Velvet being in the festival, and I can say this to you with a smile because you are the filmmaker who went around with 24 cans of film that happened to be something called Eraserhead. You went to people and you begged and you got down on one knee and you tried to get into the New York Film Festival, the Cannes Film Festival. You finally went and borrowed a shopping cart saying, "I promise you this will be returned." And indeed it was. How nice to know, David, that after all you have been through as a filmmaker, as a screenwriter, that you can have a project like Blue Velvet and it's in a film festival. And you didn't have to beg. This
is true. It's fantastic. It's a great world.
Now, why are you saying that with such a smile?
Because it is, I guess.
Do you mean that?
Oh, yeah. It's a pretty fascinating world, yeah.
You sound like one of the characters in Blue Velvet. Isn't that an important line?
It's a strange world is the important line, yeah.
Do you feel good about the treatment accorded to you in 1986 as a filmmaker?
I don't know what that treatment is yet because Blue Velvet has not been released. So I'll see what the treatment is within the next couple of weeks.
Are you telling me that you don't place much importance in what are known as trade paper inter-industry reviews, Mr. Lynch?
Well, no, good things are happening, but you know, you can't count on too much till it really happens.
What's important to you? I should point out that I sit in front of you and I can point out that Eraserhead is still playing in a London movie house. That the runs of Eraserhead in New York and San Francisco and Los Angeles not only set precedents, there are people who still go back to see Eraserhead and talk about it. And on the way to Blue Velvet being a reality, I still think of that meeting that was set up between you and Mel Brooks. And you were terrified. You told a friend that you were afraid that if Mel Brooks saw Eraserhead, you'd never get the job directing The Elephant Man on film. Then Mel Brooks came out afterwards and said, before he met you, he expected to meet someone that looked like a short, fat German with spit running down his chin. And he met this wonderful, open-faced, all-American kind of guy who made him think of Jimmy Stewart 35 years ago. Now, since you've heard this before, why do you think people have this preconceived notion of you, David?
Well, it's pretty obvious. But this is what films for me are all about. There's a surface of life, and this is the tip of the iceberg, and then there's so much beneath the surface, and that's the interesting bits. You can never tell. You can't judge a book by the cover.
Too true. I was thinking of you when I was sitting through Blue Velvet because I was able to recall how you've talked about your idyllic childhood, tree-lined streets, parents who never argued, didn't smoke, didn't drink, although you wish they did all of those things. You were the same boy at the time who could go to Brooklyn to visit a relative, be terrified, filled with fear, find yourself in Philadelphia, sharing a room with your buddy Jack Fisk, living near a morgue, be filled with fear. And it's all there in Blue Velvet. The idyllic tree-lined streets, firemen waving hello, and all of these things going on underneath. Am I putting autobiographical things in where they don't belong, or are they there?
They're there. I started out in the Northwest in one of the most happy childhoods you can imagine. It was picket fences and blue skies. And so things became a contrast to me, other things. Philadelphia in particular.
Why Philadelphia in particular?
Philadelphia, when I lived there, I can't say now for sure, but it was one of the sickest, most fearful, corrupt, frightening cities I've ever, set foot in, and especially the neighborhoods I was living in. And I guess I, feel the atmosphere of a place, the mood of a place, and it affects me. And I just felt I was living inside an ocean of fear. And I would see, so many things that supported that. And I guess this makes a little network in a person's psyche. And when you do get ideas, they come bobbing up through this network and are altered somewhat, and out comes Eraserhead or Blue Velvet.
Did you really say at one point, David, that there was a time when you thought you'd never get out of Philadelphia alive? Or you'd never get out?
I never felt, for it was a long time, I never felt I would get out of Philadelphia, yeah. I was printing engravings and living in a very frightening neighborhood in a big old house. But things were looking pretty bleak. And then I got a grant from the American Film Institute, and it's one of those things that come along in people's lives that really, it's like a bolt of electricity, changed everything.
All right, on that we'll take a commercial break. Be right back with David Lynch and more on Blue Velvet. Isabella Rossellini, in a moment from David Lynch's Blue Velvet. My reaction to you toward that scene, and very much of what Isabella Rossellini does in Blue Velvet, but specifically there, is that I have to go all the way back to Joshua Logan's direction of Marilyn Monroe in Bus Stop, William Inge's Bus Stop, and Monroe's attempt as Cherie to sing that old black magic, where you saw in the use of the music within the character's definition, the futility, the hopelessness, the lack of talent, the belief that somehow it would be overcome. You reach out toward the character, knowing the character's doomed. You can't help. And there it all is. And I compliment you because Isabella Rossellini's creation of Dorothy Valens is right there.
This is true. No, it's the character of Dorothy Valens is she's a foreign person in a strange land, and at the same time, I don't know if there'll ever be an album of her songs.
Could be a hit single.
It could be, but
will
like
she
you
do
say,
a music video, Dave?
I don't know, but a lot of things come through when she does sing, and like you said, it's Dorothy, and your heart does open up.
You recently stopped on your way to Toronto and Montreal. Of course, here I'm sitting in front of a filmmaker who makes a movie like Elephant Man and receives 8 Academy Award nominations, 2 of them specifically for himself as director and writer. But when you stopped in Montreal, Blue Velvet managed to pick up some more prizes, one of them being for Dennis Hopper. I must point out that as a moviegoer, that is one of the most insidiously repellent, no redeeming social value creations ever put on the motion picture screen. And Dennis Hopper is obviously having a wonderful time doing it.
You bet.
Did you have to control him? Or did you let him go?
Actually, Dennis said that I even, pushed him further. He thought he was getting too far out, and he wasn't even halfway out there. He was 3/4 of the way out there, I guess. But Frank is a guy who is driven. All the characters are driven in various directions, but Frank loves his work, and Frank is a lover. He's filled with love, and it's just a hair twisted. But he's pretty intense.
Now there's a writer-director making understatements on camera. You are also the filmmaker who gave us the film version of Dune, and you've been generous. There are many people in the motion picture industry who aren't as generous as you are toward Dino De Laurentiis. But we're talking about Blue Velvet, which is a DEG presentation through Dino De Laurentiis' company. You made a reference at one point saying that, well, you had not seen Michael Cimino's Heaven's Gate. You really felt that if someone, I'm paraphrasing now, but you felt that if someone like a Dino De Laurentiis had been on the set, would have been a good thing. And that you feel that we, as directors, you said, need that intervention. You need that person to come in and pull in the reins, to control you. Are you saying that, is that a constant? Or was that in defense of Dune or in defense of an empire builder like Dino De Laurentiis, or your understanding now of what happened with a film like Heaven's Gate, where there was no one administratively in control?
I think that it's good to have some sort of boundaries, and I don't know exactly, what it does, but it helps. You're forced to think that boundaries getting too tight, like on Eraserhead, the boundaries of no money stopped us cold. But too much money and too much freedom, sometimes you're just floating out in space, and it becomes something other than filmmaking. And so I think that maybe when I said that, maybe somebody like Dino could have just made a tighter corral around the whole process, and it could have sparked something, and something better could have happened. I don't know, but I like a boundary, some sort of restriction. It's just it almost pushes me. But I also, for artistic business, I like freedom there, and so I think the two things can coexist. You need a real good producer who is totally organized, but who also keeps you from getting a little bit too crazy.
Where does the making of Dune fall into what you just said?
The making of Dune went wrong because we had a 2-hour and 15-minute limit on the length of the picture, and it was too much to tell in that amount of time. So it was like a fantastic Porsche car, kind of compacted down into it. Still a Porsche, but it's hard to drive it, and it doesn't look so good anymore.
All right, on that we'll take another break. Be right back with David Lynch and more. Dennis Hopper in a moment from David Lynch's film Blue Velvet. Again, Isabella Rossellini, Kyle MacLachlan. I think it's really full circle, and there's something romantic almost about you and your longtime friendship with Jack Fisk. The fact that Jack Fisk has a sister who happens to be an important part of your life. You married her. And that Jack Fisk was involved in this year's festival because Sissy Spacek was involved in Night Mother. And that your old buddy Jack Fisk could direct a film like Raggedy Man, and the irony of the title of his previous effort with Sissy Spacek being Violets Are Blue, your film being Blue Velvet. Do you two still see each other?
Oh, you bet, yeah.
Because they're living out on a farm, and you're, I think, in California.
Yeah, I see Jack and Sissy, and strangely enough, in the same year, we both made a film with the word man in it, and then practically in the same year with the word blue in it, so interesting.
David, who introduced you to David Cronenberg? How did you meet a Canadian filmmaker?
Dino De Laurentiis.
In what city?
New York City.
Did you have an immediate rapport?
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know David real well. I'm looking forward to seeing his picture of The Fly. But, I guess he's a kindred spirit.
Gee, that's a funny thing to say out loud. I was thinking that about both of you, too. Because you are unique in what you put on film. There is, I suppose one of the things I like about seeing your movies, whether one does talk about Eraserhead or Elephant Man or Dune or now Blue Velvet, they're never dull. You get into arguments. You can go out with a group of people after a screening of Blue Velvet and practically divide the room in half. And you know perfectly well that one half of the room believes you're a genius, and the other half of the room has the same opinion Mel Brooks had of you before he met you. And it must confuse you, too. You must feel it about people when they meet you for the first time, thinking, gee, what kind of a guy are we going to meet? Does it affect you, or does it affect your meeting of people?
No, it doesn't. I guess a lot of my life, I'm down in somewhere else or up in somewhere else. I don't know where it is. I'm not sleepwalking through, meeting people, but I really like people. It's just a different part of me that meets them.
Has your teenage daughter seen Blue Velvet?
She saw it almost finished. She was there when we were mixing it.
What was her reaction to it, David?
She digs it.
That's it?
That's it.
Did she sympathize with Isabella Rossellini's creation of Dorothy?
I think she did, yeah. Yeah, I think she did.
I don't say this on any silly level, but was there any hesitation on Isabella's part in terms of some of the more bizarre things her character was required to offer on film, or did she give herself to you as an actress? No questions.
Well, I think an actress, a good or great actress, says goodbye to themselves and they go into the character. And Isabella, I think she fell in love with the character of Dorothy, and she said, "I'm there 100%." She was.
I wish you well with Blue Velvet. It is not going to be without controversy, and I think you have a potential box office blockbuster on your hands.
Brian, thank you very much. I hope so.
Pleasure. We don't want you to go back to Athens and live in that basement with lizards all over the wall, do we?
No, we don't.
It's a pleasure meeting you.
Good deal, Brian. Thank you very much.